In the second episode of Season 22, Mrs. Nelson is teaching math. A fourth grade classroom, regular lesson, regular day. And while she is going over fractions, a school shooting is happening in the hallway outside her room. You hear the gunshots, you hear the screaming, you hear the SWAT team arrive. She does not flinch. She waits for the officer to clear the room. Then she turns back to the board and says, "Now let's move on to the next equation." The children open their worksheets. The math class continues. That is South Park in 2018. That is also, according to the show, what American school has quietly become. Tonight I want to argue that South Park has spent 28 years making one of the most careful, sustained, and damning arguments about American education that any show has ever made, and almost nobody has noticed, because the argument was hiding inside the jokes the whole time. Welcome to East Park. Let us begin. The teacher is the problem, Mr. Garrison and the 25-year case against competence. Before we talk about anything else South Park has ever done with schools, we need to start with a simple fact about the show that most people forget, because it has been true for so long that it has become invisible. The very first adult voice you hear in the series, in the very first episode, is a teacher. Cartman gets an anal probe aired on August 13th, 1997, and within the first few minutes of that pilot, the boys are sitting in a classroom, and the man standing in front of them is Mr. Herbert Garrison. He has been standing in front of that class, more or less, for the entire run of the show. The children have aged by 1 year. Garrison has aged by decades, changed bodies, run for president, won, lost, disappeared into the mountains, come back, and returned to that same classroom. If you want to understand what South Park believes about American schools, the first thing you have to accept is that the show decided from the very beginning that the teacher would be one of the most important adults in the world it was building. And then it spent the next 25 years making sure you could never trust him with a child. The setup in those early seasons is what most people remember. Garrison teaches with a puppet. The puppet is called Mr. Hat. Mr. Hat, in the world of the show, is not a joke the children are in on. Mr. Hat is a separate authority figure. Garrison talks to him, listens to him, occasionally argues with him in front of the class, and the children are expected to receive lessons from both of them as if this is a normal thing that a grown man is doing in a room full of 8-year-olds. The show plays it straight. The other adults never comment on it. When Mr. Hat disappears, Garrison briefly replaces him with another puppet named Mr. Twig, who speaks in a French accent, and the children complain and ask for the original puppet back. That is the level of emotional seriousness the show gives the puppet. The kids are not laughing at it, they are living with it. This is already doing a lot of work as satire before anything even happens. A grown man teaching 4th grade through a hand puppet is a picture of something real. It is a picture of a teacher who cannot speak directly to children. He needs a second voice, a softer voice, a voice he can pretend is not his own, to say the things he wants to say. And as the show goes on, what the puppet says gets worse. In Chef Goes Nanners, which is the 7th episode of Season 4, Mr. Hat turns out to be a member of the local Ku Klux Klan. Garrison, in the scene, is annoyed about it. He acts like Mr. Hat has gone behind his back to join a racist group. The show treats this as almost a minor domestic dispute between the man and his puppet. And then, seasons later, in Here Comes the Neighborhood, the 12th episode of Season 5, Garrison himself leads a campaign to drive wealthy black families out of South Park, using cross-burning and Klan tactics. The episode ends by making it clear that the campaign was always racially motivated. Garrison says so in his last line. The puppet was not a different person. The puppet was the part of him he was practicing out loud. This matters because the show is building a case, and the case is not about one strange teacher. The case is about what happens when the system hands a classroom to a person who should not have one, and then keeps handing it to him, year after year, no matter what he does. Consider the list of things Mr. Garrison has done, on camera, to children while employed by South Park Elementary. He has openly insulted students. He has mocked their intelligence. He has performed racist material in lessons. He has, in the Season 6 episode The Death Camp of Tolerance, brought his then boyfriend, Mr. Slave, into the classroom as a teaching assistant and performed explicit sex acts in front of his 4th grade students for an entire school day. The plot of that episode is not a misunderstanding. Garrison has learned that he can sue the school for a huge amount of money if he is fired for being gay, and he is trying to get himself fired on purpose, so he deliberately escalates. He shoves the class gerbil into his boyfriend in front of the children. The kids complain to the other adults. The other adults refuse to believe them because the adults are too busy trying to appear tolerant to notice that actual harm is happening. The kids get sent to a camp. Garrison gets a medal. The children are punished for having a working moral sense. The teacher is celebrated for having none. The Death Camp of Tolerance originally aired on November 20th, 2002. The show has rerun that episode and aired new ones with Garrison still teaching for more than 20 years since. He has never been meaningfully held accountable inside the world of the show. That is the point. The show is not asking you to be shocked by what he does. The show is asking you to notice that nothing ever happens to him. He goes through a sex change in the 9th season opener, Mr. Garrison's fancy new vagina, and keeps teaching. He reverses it in Eek a Penis, the 5th episode of season 12, and keeps teaching. He leaves the school in the middle of the run to become a mountain hermit, and then comes back and keeps teaching. He is fired briefly, runs for president, wins, serves 4 seasons as a parody of the first Trump administration, loses, comes home, and in the South Park U vaccination special, he walks back into South Park Elementary like none of it happened and picks up right where he left off. The children in his class pretend not to remember. The faculty pretend not to remember. The show is not making a mistake when it does this. The show is making a point. The point is that in American public education, the worst teachers do not leave. They wait. They change shapes. They come back. And this is before you even get to the question of what Garrison knows or does not know about the subjects he is supposed to be teaching. In the death camp of tolerance, he tells a student that boiling water is an exothermic reaction. It is not. Boiling water absorbs heat. It is endothermic. This is a chemistry fact a decent middle schooler could correct. Garrison, a professional 4th grade teacher, has it backwards. The episode plays the line straight. Nobody corrects him. The children write it down. When Go God Go airs in season 10, Garrison is forced to teach evolution to his class and does so only because he is, at that point in the show's timeline, dating Richard Dawkins. The curriculum is whatever he is personally in the mood for. The subject matter changes based on who he is sleeping with. An entire classroom of children is absorbing as fact whatever belief system their teacher woke up with that morning. What the show is doing here, underneath the jokes, is building a portrait of a very specific kind of adult. Garrison is a person who is deeply unhappy with himself. He has been unhappy since the first season. He does not know what he wants, he does not like who he is, he resents being a teacher, and he takes that resentment out on children every single day. Because children are the only people in his life who cannot refuse to listen to him. The show knows this about him. The other adults in the show do not know it because the other adults are not paying attention. Mr. Hat was not funny because puppets are funny. Mr. Hat was funny because when you watched it, you slowly realized you were looking at a grown man who had to use a puppet to survive the conversations he was required to have with children. The show is also doing something else with Garrison that is easy to miss if you only watch it for the jokes. It is refusing to let him be the exception. In a different kind of show, Garrison would be the bad teacher. He would be the one who makes everyone else look good. The boys would go to another classroom and find a teacher who cared, and the contrast would be the point. South Park refuses to do this. It has never once introduced a Mr. Garrison replacement who was a good teacher. When Ms. Chalksendick shows up in season 4 to take over the 4th grade, she is worse. When Mr. Mackey covers a class, he is worse. When Cartman is appointed substitute teacher in Eek a Penis, the class scores go up, but only because he teaches them to cheat. There is no control group in South Park Elementary. There is no better option down the hall. Every single time the show has offered you an alternative to Garrison, the alternative has been the same problem wearing different clothes. This is the quiet argument the show has been making since 1997, and it is the argument the rest of this video is going to build on. The argument is not that Mr. Garrison is a bad person, though he is. The argument is that the system in which Mr. Garrison works is not built to notice whether he is a bad person or a good one. It is built to keep the classroom occupied. It is built to maintain the schedule. It is built to protect itself from being sued. It is built to keep the doors open and the children seated. What happens inside the room is, from the system's point of view, a separate issue. You can see this clearly if you line up the moments when South Park Elementary actually acts to discipline a teacher. There are almost none. Garrison is not fired for the puppet. He is not fired for the racism. He is not fired for teaching bad science. He is not fired after the death camp of tolerance. He is not fired for being openly predatory in his behavior around his assistants. He is removed briefly in Eek a Penis, not for any of the things he has actually done to children, but because he is going through a personal crisis and Principal Victoria wants him to sort out his life. The only thing that has ever gotten a teacher in trouble at South Park Elementary is being visibly inconvenient to the administration in that specific week. What they teach does not matter. Who they hurt does not matter. The only thing that matters is whether they are currently making the school look bad. And so, for 25 years and counting, Mr. Garrison stays at the front of the room. The Mr. Hat puppet eventually retires, mostly. The politics change. The body changes. The country changes. The classroom does not. The same children sit in the same seats and receive the same kind of instruction from the same kind of adult. And the show keeps asking asking in 100 different ways a single question. If this is the person we are trusting to shape the next generation, then what exactly do we think we are shaping them into? The honest answer, the show is going to spend another 24 chapters making clear, is that we already know. We have seen the product. His name is Eric Cartman, and his classroom behavior is, according to the school, at least the third worst problem in the room. The first is the teacher. The second is the person who is supposed to be supervising the teacher, but that is a conversation for later. What matters for now is this. When you are watching South Park and you see Mr. Garrison talking to his class, do not think of him as a cartoon character delivering a punchline. Think of him as what the show has been showing you, patiently, week after week, since the Clinton administration. He is a man who is allowed to stand in front of children because nobody above him has ever decided to stop allowing it. He is a portrait of what the institution tolerates when no one is watching closely enough to insist otherwise. And he is not, despite what it might look like on the surface, the exception in the building. He is the example. The rest of the faculty is trying, in their own ways, to reach the same standard. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Which brings us to the question that has been sitting at the back of the room for the last 20 minutes, and which we are about to walk over and pick up. If Garrison is the worst teacher South Park Elementary has, and the show refuses to show us anyone better, then the other teachers we do meet are not colleagues. They are variations, and each one has been built very carefully to show us a different way that a person in front of a classroom can fail the children sitting in it. They are not a supporting cast. They are a museum, and the museum is about to open. Section 2. The Revolving Faculty, a Museum of Pedagogical Failure. The trick South Park plays on you, and it plays it very slowly, is that Mr. Garrison starts to feel normal. You watch enough episodes, you get used to the puppet, you get used to the voice, you get used to the way he stands at the front of the room, and by the time you get to the 4th or 5th season, he is just furniture. This is the teacher. This is what a teacher looks like. You stop noticing, and right at the moment you stop noticing, the show introduces a new teacher, and the new teacher is worse, and you realize the show has been setting you up for this the whole time. Garrison was never the problem. Garrison was the baseline. The show's real argument is about how many different ways a person can stand in front of children and fail them, and how every single one of those ways is currently employed at South Park Elementary. Let us start with the first substitute the show ever gave you. Her name is Miss Ellen, and she appears in the Season 2 episode Tom's Rhinoplasty, which aired on February 11th, 1998. Garrison goes off to have a nose job. A pretty young woman is hired to cover his class. She is, by every measure the show bothers to give you, actually good at the job. She is patient. She is kind. She explains things clearly. The children respond to her. For about 10 minutes of screen time, the show is letting you believe that a functional teacher exists in this world. And then Garrison comes back, sees that the children have become attached to her, and launches a personal campaign to destroy her career. He discovers she is a lesbian, which, in the logic of the show, is a piece of information he weaponizes, not because he has any real objection to it, but because he is threatened by her. He arranges for her to be shot into the sun by NASA. That is how the episode ends. The first, and for a long time the only good teacher the show ever introduces, is literally launched into space and killed by the bad teacher, because the bad teacher could not handle being compared to her. This is the show telling you something very specific about how it plans to handle teachers for the rest of its run. A good one, if it ever appears, will not be allowed to stay. The system will push her out. And the system is not some outside force. The system is the people already working inside the school. The next major teacher the show introduces is Miss Diane Choxendick, who arrives in the Season 4 episode titled simply 4th Grade. She is drawn deliberately to be unpleasant to look at. She has sagging breasts, a lazy eye, thick glasses, and a general appearance that the other adults in the show openly react to with disgust. The show is not being subtle here. The visual design is the argument. Miss Choxendick is every exhausted, burned out, bitter career teacher the average American kid has ever had, translated into a cartoon body. She has been in the profession too long. She does not like the children. The children do not like her. She is not cruel in any particular scene. She is just done. She has run out. And the show is asking you to notice that running out is, in itself, a form of harm. A teacher who is physically present but emotionally empty is still teaching. And what she is teaching the children is that nobody is really there. Her single most important contribution to the show comes in proper condom use. The 7th episode of Season 5, which aired on August 1st, 2001. The parents of South Park decide the school should handle sex education. Miss Choxendick is assigned to teach the girls. She is, we learn, someone who was dumped by a boyfriend after a bad sexual experience and has been bitter about men ever since. She brings that bitterness into the classroom. Her lesson plan is not about biology. It is about fear. She shows the girls horrifying pictures pictures of sexually transmitted diseases. She shows them a graphic childbirth video. She does not at any point explain that the diseases she is describing are only transmitted through actual sexual contact. The girls walk out of her class terrified of the boys as a general category of human being. A war breaks out in the school. BB throws a sharpened boomerang at Clyde. Kenny dies. The show is funny, as South Park is funny, but the underlying point is absolutely serious. A teacher who is unwell, who is angry at her own life, is given a classroom full of children and asked to teach them about their own bodies. And what comes out of her mouth is the shape of her own pain, presented as information. Miss Choxendick dies in the 4th episode of season 6, The Simpsons Already Did It. She has a sexual encounter with Mr. Mackey and does not survive it. The school does not mourn her for very long. The position opens up, Garrison comes back to take it, and the faculty rotation continues. The children absorb another teacher and move on. This is how the show treats the death of an educator. It is a plot beat. The machine keeps running. The next teacher is already walking through the door. Then the show does something truly dark. In the season 10 episode Miss Teacher Bangs a Boy, which aired on October 18th, 2006, we meet Miss Stevenson. She is a kindergarten teacher. Ike, who is Kyle's little brother, is in her class. She develops a romantic and sexual relationship with him. The show is, in this case, directly referencing a real event. Matt Stone has stated on the record that the story was based on the case of Mary Kay Letourneau, who in 1996 began a sexual relationship with a 12-year-old former student. Parker and Stone made Ike even younger for the episode because they felt it made the point sharper. The point being made is not that this teacher is a monster, although she is. The point is about how the world around her refuses to react. Kyle finds out. Kyle tries to tell the adults. The police are called. The police see a photograph of Miss Stevenson, notice she is attractive, and say the word nice. Ike's parents are not clearly informed. The other men in town treat Ike like a kid who has gotten lucky. The only person who will help Kyle is Cartman, and the only reason Cartman will help is that Ike and Miss Stevenson kissed in the hallway without a hall pass, which is against school policy. The school does eventually fire her. She then escapes prison by claiming alcoholism, which is a direct reference to Mel Gibson's legal defense from earlier that year. She walks free. The show is showing you, very plainly, that when the harm goes in the opposite direction of what the culture expects, the system does not know how to see it at all. The institution is not built to protect children. It is built to respond to the kinds of stories adults already have scripts for. The pattern continues across the faculty. Mr. Adler, the shop teacher, appears in the season 3 episode Tweak vs. Craig. He is not a villain. He is something quieter and arguably sadder. His wife has died. He has not recovered. The episode gives him a running dream sequence where he is still with her, and he wakes up to find himself in a classroom full of children using power tools under the supervision of a man who is barely holding it together. The show presents this without mockery. It is one of the few times a teacher in South Park is treated with real sympathy, and yet even in that sympathy, the argument is the same. A man in deep grief is being asked to keep 4th graders safe around machinery. Nobody has stepped in to help him. Nobody has noticed that he should probably not be at work. He is alone, and the institution is letting him be alone, because the institution needs the shop class to meet on Tuesdays. And then there is the strangest moment in the show's entire treatment of teachers, which is the episode Eek, a Penis, the 5th episode of season 12, which aired on April 9th, 2008. Garrison is going through his reverse sex change and is temporarily removed from the classroom by Principal Victoria. Cartman is made substitute teacher. This is the same Cartman who has, at this point in the show, manipulated, bullied, humiliated, and actively traumatized most of the children in that class for more than a decade of viewer time. He is given authority over them, and the plot of the episode is that Cartman takes over a struggling inner-city school and teaches the students to succeed by showing them how to cheat. The test scores go up, the students start passing, the school district is thrilled. The episode is very directly a parody of Stand and Deliver, the 1988 film about a real teacher named Jaime Escalante who taught his students advanced math. Except in Cartman's version of the story, he teaches them to cheat, and the system cannot tell the difference between actual learning and cheating, because the system only measures the scores. This is maybe the most quietly devastating joke about American schooling in the entire show. The point is not that Cartman is a bad teacher. The point is that a child who is known to everyone in the story as a sociopath produces the same measurable results as a brilliant one, because the thing being measured does not actually track whether learning is happening. It only tracks whether the numbers on the page match an answer sheet somewhere. The school system in the episode celebrates Cartman. He is recognized as a great teacher. Nobody checks his methods. Nobody asks how he did it. The paperwork is in order. The scores are up. The institution is satisfied. Put all of these teachers next to each other and you can see what the show has been building. Garrison is the bad teacher teacher who stays. Miss Ellen is the good teacher who is pushed out. Miss Choxendick is the burned-out teacher whose unhealed wounds leak into the lesson plan. Miss Stevenson is the predator the system cannot see because her face does not match the picture the system has of a predator. Mr. Adler is the grieving teacher nobody has offered any help to. Cartman is the substitute who proves by being rewarded that nobody has been measuring teaching in the first place. These are not random character designs. These are a complete diagnosis laid out across the run of the show of the different ways a person can stand in a classroom and not actually be what a classroom needs. And what the show understands and what it is careful to keep showing you is that the children can feel the difference between these teachers even when they cannot put it into words. They liked Miss Ellen. They were afraid of Miss Choxendick. They were confused by Mr. Adler. They tolerated Garrison the way you tolerate weather. They learned to cheat for Cartman because cheating worked. What the children absorbed from each of them was not the lesson plan. It was the quality of the adult. It was the presence or absence of care. Over years of classroom time, the boys have absorbed an enormous amount of information about how adults can fail them, and almost none of it has come from the curriculum. All of it has come from who was standing in front of the room. There is one more detail in all of this that is worth stopping on. Every teacher we have talked about, with the partial exception of Miss Ellen, has been a long-running character on the show. Garrison is in hundreds of episodes. Mackey and Choxendick are everywhere in the early 2000s. Even Mr. Adler returns. The show is not using teachers as one-off jokes. The show is keeping them in the regular cast, which means that when South Park goes on hiatus and comes back a year later and you turn the television on, the teachers are still there, in the same classroom, with the same problems, doing the same damage. That is the argument. Nothing about the faculty ever changes. The same adults are in the same rooms, and the same children are sitting in front of them, and the same years go by, and the system sustains itself by refusing to notice what is happening inside its own walls. You can watch every episode I have just described and come away thinking you were watching a cartoon about funny teachers. The show is not objecting if you do. The show is happy to let you laugh. But if you watch carefully, you will notice that the joke is never really on the teacher. The joke is on the quiet assumption built into the world of the show that these are the adults who have been chosen. These are the people the town has decided can be trusted with the next generation. Every classroom scene in South Park rests on that assumption, and every classroom scene is, in its own way, a question about whether that assumption deserves to be trusted. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously, which leads us, by a fairly short walk down the hallway, to the office at the end of the corridor. Because if the teachers are a catalog of failure, then there is one adult in the building whose entire job is to notice when the children are struggling, to listen to them, to step in when something is going wrong. If the teachers are breaking the children, then the counselor is supposed to be the one who catches the pieces. And the show has a very specific opinion about how well that actually works. We are about to meet him, and the first thing he is going to do, in the first episode he appears in, is pass a lit drug around his own classroom and lose track of it. Section 3. Drugs are bad, okay? Mr. Mackey and the Therapy Industrial Complex. Every school in America has this person. They go by different titles: guidance counselor, school counselor, student wellness coordinator, life skills advisor. The specific job changes by district, but the shape of the position is the same everywhere. This is the adult in the building whose entire stated purpose is to sit with children who are struggling and help them. They are not a teacher. They do not hand out grades. They are not a principal. They do not hand out punishments. They are supposed to be the safe adult, the one who listens, the one who steps in before something breaks, the one who, when everything else in a child's life is going wrong, is supposed to be there. In South Park, that adult is named Mr. Mackey, and the first thing the show shows him doing, in the first episode that focuses on him, is losing a marijuana cigarette in a classroom full of fourth graders. The episode is called Ike's Wee Wee, and it aired on May 20th, 1998, as the third episode of season 2. It is the episode that introduces Mackey to the show's central story. He walks into Mr. Garrison's classroom to give a lecture on the dangers of drugs. As part of his presentation, he lights an actual joint, tells the children this is what marijuana looks like, and passes it around the room so they can smell it. He then loses track of it. The joint disappears. He panics. He demands that whoever has it pass it back. No one does. He gets fired for bringing drugs to school. He then becomes a drug addict himself. He loses his home. He ends up homeless and high. Eventually he gets cleaned up, comes back, and returns to his job as the school counselor, where he will remain for most of the next 25 years trying to help children with their problems. The scene where he passes the joint around is not, as much as it may sound like it, something Parker and Stone invented. Trey Parker Parker has said on the record that it is based on a real event from his own life. When Parker was in 7th grade, a real counselor came into his real classroom, lit a real joint, passed it around so the students could see what it smelled like, and lost it. That really happened to a real child in a real American school. Parker has said he just wrote the event down as he remembered it, and it became the scene. This is important because it tells you something about where Mackey comes from. He is not a joke Parker and Stone made up. He is a documentary sketch. He is what a school counselor actually looked like to a kid who sat through one in the 1980s. The character himself is based on an actual person too. Parker's middle school counselor was named Stan Lackey. Lackey is where Mackey comes from, right down to the name. And the signature tick, the little word Mackey adds to the end of almost every sentence, the word mk, is Lackey's actual verbal habit, recorded and exaggerated and turned into a character. Parker has said Lackey used to tell him, "Trey, quit fooling around and get back to your schoolwork, mk?" And now, as Parker once put it, he is making millions out of him. The joke, in other words, is at the expense of a specific person. But the satire is not really about Stan Lackey. The satire is about what the mk actually means. Listen to how Mackey speaks for long enough and you start to hear something underneath the tick. He does not deliver instructions. He asks for agreement. Every sentence he says ends with a soft little upward pull, a quiet little request for the other person to nod along. Drugs are bad, mk? Don't do drugs, mk? If you do drugs, you're bad, mk? Because drugs are bad, mk? It is not a statement. It is a question waiting to be answered. It is an authority figure who has stopped believing in his own authority and who is therefore permanently asking the child in front of him to confirm that what he is saying is acceptable. The tick is what a certain kind of adult sounds like when they are standing in a room full of children and they have no idea what they are supposed to be doing. This is what makes Mackey such a sharp portrait. He is not mean. He is not a villain. He is, in most of his scenes, genuinely trying to help. The problem is that the job he has been given is impossible. The training he has been given is useless, and the situations he is walking into are way beyond what any single adult in a small office at the end of the hallway could realistically be expected to fix. So he falls back on the scripts. Drugs are bad. Stay positive. Here's a pamphlet. Here's a sticker. Here's a pep talk. Here, in several episodes across the show's run, is a prescription. When Kyle tells Mackey in the season 1 Christmas episode that he can see a small talking piece of living feces named Mr. Hanky, Mackey's response is to immediately put Kyle on a heavy dose of Prozac. When the boys in the season 4 episode Timmy 2000 pretend to have attention problems to get out of schoolwork, Mackey prescribes Ritalin to the entire class. No questions asked. The counselor's office is not a place where a child is listened to. It is a place where a child is medicated. And here is where the show's argument gets sharp. Mackey is not corrupt. He genuinely believes the pills are the answer. He is not taking bribes from drug companies. He has been trained by the institution he works for to treat every emotional or behavioral issue a child walks in with as a medical problem that a prescription can solve. The show is watching this happen and noticing something most adults in the real world are too tired to notice. The whole point of having a counselor instead of just a doctor is that a counselor is supposed to talk to the child first, to find out what is actually happening, to understand the situation. Mackey does not do this. Mackey listens for about 12 seconds, identifies a symptom, and reaches for his pad. The emotional work that the job is supposed to do has been replaced by the paperwork that the job actually does. The mk is the sound of the gap between those two things. The show keeps coming back to this. In the season 12 episode, The Ungroundable, Mackey tries to investigate a drug problem among the students and ends up trying crack himself and becoming an addict for the second time in the show's run. This is not a one-time gag. The show has now twice placed its school counselor in the position of drug user. The man who is supposed to be teaching children to stay away from substances is, over the course of the series, more addicted than most of his students will ever be. And the institution does not notice either time until it becomes a visible emergency. Nobody in the administration is checking on Mackey. Nobody is asking if the person they have assigned to watch over the mental health of their students has any mental health of his own. Which brings us to Inception, the 10th episode of season 14. The premise is a parody of the movie Inception, but the real content of the episode is that it reveals Mackey's childhood. We learn that he was bullied when he was young. We learn that he was, on a school field trip when he was in 4th grade, sexually abused by a costumed owl mascot named Woodsy. We learn that his office is a hoarder's space because he has been clinging to objects since his childhood as a way of trying to feel safe. In the episode, when Stan tries to help him clean out his clutter, Mackey threatens to sexually assault Stan if Stan touches any of his things. The show plays this as a joke, but the joke is not funny in a simple way. The joke is that the counselor, the person the school trusts to handle the trauma of its children, is himself himself a pile of untreated trauma being held together by a verbal tic and a supply of pills. Nobody has ever helped him either. He is doing the job the school has given him while carrying on his back every wound he has ever had, because there is no one in the adult world of South Park whose job is to care for the caretakers. This gets worse when you watch the later seasons. In Bass to Mouth, the 10th episode of season 15, which aired on October 19th, 2011, a gossip website starts exposing embarrassing secrets about South Park elementary students. A student named Corey Duran is mentioned. Corey killed himself the year before after being bullied by Cartman, and the administrators know that Cartman's bullying drove him to it. Another student, Jenny Simons, attempts suicide by jumping from the roof of the school. Mackey and Principal Victoria and Mr. Adler's response to all of this is not to expel Cartman. Their response is to hire Cartman as the solution. They cut a deal with him. They ask him to stop the public embarrassment, and in exchange, they will give him whatever he wants. What he wants, and what they deliver, is watching the school staff beat up the singer Selena Gomez in front of him. Later in the same episode, when Cartman becomes a liability, Mackey and the other administrators physically throw him in front of a school bus and tell everyone he committed suicide. The counselor, the person the children are supposed to go to when they are thinking about ending their lives, is, in this episode, willing to stage a fake student suicide to cover up a scandal. Think about that for one extra moment. This is the school counselor. 2 students have died or nearly died because of bullying in this school. The counselor's response is not counseling. His response is a public relations plan, a murder attempt, and a cover-up. The show is not being random here. The show is saying something very specific. When the counselor's job is really about protecting the institution instead of the children, the counselor will eventually commit harm himself because the institution will eventually ask him to, and his training has taught him to agree, okay? The very latest seasons only sharpen this point. In the 27th season episode, Got a Nut, Mackey is fired from the school by PC principal as part of a budget cut. He does not become homeless this time. He goes to work for Immigration and Customs Enforcement, better known as ICE. The show's current argument is that when the school counselor is no longer needed inside the school, he does not go into a different caring profession. He goes to the most aggressive enforcement agency in the United States government. The skills transfer cleanly. The man who spent decades telling children that drugs are bad, MK, is now, in the world of the show, checking their papers. The institutions that hired him have always valued the same thing, which is compliance, and he has always been good at producing it. This is the argument the show has built, patiently, across 3 decades. The counselor in your child's school is probably not a bad person. He may even be a kind one, but the job he has been hired to do has almost nothing to do with actually caring for children. It has to do with documenting concerns. It has to do with handing out prescriptions when the concerns become inconvenient. It has to do with protecting the school from liability when something goes wrong. It has to do with telling children in a soft and non-confrontational voice that drugs are bad and they should stay positive and here is a pamphlet, while the actual problems in their actual lives go completely unaddressed, because solving those problems was never really on the list. The MK is the softest possible way to say, I am not going to help you, but I would like you to agree that I tried. And yet, for all of this, the show does not quite hate Mackey. This is important. The show keeps him in the cast. It gives him moments of real sadness. It takes the time across entire episodes to show you that he is a person, not a cartoon, and that the failures of the counseling system he represents are not his personal moral failures. They are structural. The show is angry at the job, not at the man, which is, in its own way, the most damning thing the show can say. If Mackey were a bad person, you could just fire Mackey. The problem is that you can fire Mackey, hire someone else, hand them the same pad of prescriptions and the same script about staying positive, and within a year, they will have become exactly the same thing he was, because the role produces the person, which, once you accept it, changes how you have to watch every single scene that takes place in that little office at the end of the hallway. A child walks in with a problem, a sentence gets asked, a sentence gets answered, a prescription gets written, or a platitude gets offered, or a pamphlet gets handed over. The child walks out, the door closes, the next child walks in, and everything the child was actually carrying when they walked in is still sitting on their shoulders when they walk out, because the room they just visited was never really built to carry it for them. It was built to document that it was noticed. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. If the counselor cannot help and the teachers cannot teach, then a reasonable person might assume the material itself, the actual content of what is being taught, is where the real value of school lives. That is the whole point. The lessons are what matter. The adults are just the delivery system. The curriculum is the thing. And for about 2 seconds, you can hold on to that idea. Then South Park is going to walk you into a a 4th grade classroom and show you a masturbating monkey teaching a child how to spell, and the illusion is going to end very quickly. Section 4. The curriculum is the weapon. Sex ed, phonics, and the theater of education. There is a certain kind of adult hope that survives a lot of bad school experiences. It goes like this. Maybe the teachers are tired. Maybe the counselors are useless. Maybe the principals are cowards. But the curriculum itself, the actual content of what is being taught, the lessons in the books and the units on the board, that has to mean something. That has to be the real thing. That is why schools exist. Everything else is a delivery system. The curriculum is the point. South Park has spent almost 3 decades walking up to that idea and taking it apart piece by piece in front of you. And the show's argument, once you see it laid out, is simple and deeply unsettling. What is being taught inside the school is, very often, not neutral content being delivered badly. It is ideology, dressed up in cartoon colors and handed to children by adults who have no idea what is actually in the package. The curriculum is not the thing that makes the school worth having. The curriculum is, very often, the sharpest weapon the school has. The clearest statement of this case is the 5th season episode Proper Condom Use, which aired on August 1st, 2001. It is the episode most people reach for when they want to argue that South Park is just rude for the sake of being rude. It is also, if you actually watch it, one of the most tightly constructed arguments against institutional sex education ever put on American television. The setup is simple. Stan does something embarrassing with his dog in front of his parents. His parents are horrified. They do not know how to explain to their own children what sex actually is. Rather than have a conversation, they do what American parents have done for decades. They demand the school take care of it. The school agrees. Sex education is added to the curriculum, and at this point, the show does something very deliberate. It shows you 3 different adults handling the same subject. Each one represents a different failure mode of school-based sex education, and together, they make the argument complete. Mr. Mackey gets the boys. He has not had sex, by his own admission in the episode, since he was 19 years old. That was 21 years ago. He has no current knowledge of the subject he is teaching. He stumbles through the lesson, unable to explain the basic mechanics because the institution has handed the job of teaching children about sex to someone who does not remember how it works. The boys leave his class confused and with wrong information. Ms. Choxendick gets the girls. She, as we learned in the previous section, has personal baggage about men that she has not worked through. Her lesson is not educational. It is a fear campaign. She shows the girls graphic pictures of sexually transmitted diseases and a detailed video of childbirth. She forgets, critically, to mention that these diseases only spread through actual sexual contact. The girls walk out of her classroom believing that simply being near a boy without a condom will give them a deadly illness. Ms. Choxendick has not taught them biology. She has taught them her own unresolved rage at a man who dumped her, and she has taught it as if it were science. And then the episode goes somewhere that is genuinely dark, even for South Park, because Mr. Mackey and Ms. Choxendick are only the first 2 parts of the argument. The third part is Mr. Garrison, who is assigned to teach condom use to the kindergarten class. His demonstration of how to put on a condom involves using his mouth and a model dildo in front of 5-year-olds. The scene was, according to the show's DVD commentary, something Comedy Central asked Parker and Stone to shorten. They kept it for the original broadcast. They cut it from reruns. The episode was banned outright by the British channel Sky One. If you step back from the shock of the scene, the argument is laid out in plain view. A burned-out counselor with no current knowledge of the subject. A bitter teacher with personal trauma leaking into her lesson plan. A predator who treats the curriculum as an opportunity to perform his own sexuality in front of children. These are the 3 adults your school has picked to teach your children about their own bodies. And the show's conclusion, delivered at the end of the episode by Chef, is stated so clearly it is almost a direct address to the audience. Chef says plainly that sex is something that should be taught by the family, not by the schools, because when you leave it up to the school, you have no idea who your children are actually learning it from. It could be someone who does not know. It could be someone who has a bad opinion of it. It could be a complete pervert. The show is not making a joke there. The show is, for once, letting a character state the thesis directly. Now, you could watch Proper Condom Use and write it off as a one-off episode, one unusually focused half hour, but the show has been circling this same argument for years. Go back to the 6th episode of Season 3, Sexual Harassment Panda, which aired on July 7th, 1999. An educational mascot in a panda costume comes to the school to teach the children about sexual harassment. The lesson is so badly delivered that Cartman walks out believing any insult is legally actionable. He sues Stan for calling him an ass sucker. Kyle's father, Gerald, a lawyer, sees sees money in it. He chains the lawsuits together. Students sue students. Students sue the school. The school is bankrupted. By the end of the episode, the very classrooms the children are sitting in have been physically stripped of desks, posters, and chairs because the school spent all its money paying lawsuit damages that came directly from a curriculum unit designed to prevent a problem that nobody had been having until the curriculum arrived to teach them about it. The Educational Assembly did not solve a problem. It invented one and then charged the school for it. The show returns to the mascot device again and again. This is important. Every time South Park wants to show you a piece of curriculum being delivered to children, it reaches for the same visual shorthand: a costumed animal, a puppet, a mascot, something soft and cute standing in front of the class telling them what to think about a serious issue. Sexual Harassment Panda is only the first. The island of misfit mascots from the same episode gives you Willy the don't stare directly into the sun worm, Oinky the run around with scissors pig, Hoppy the don't do stuff that might irritate your inner ear badger, and Jimmy the don't hold on to a large magnet while someone else uses a fan nearby falcon. These are not random jokes. They are, every one of them, images of curriculum reduced to slogans, delivered by costumed adults who are no longer qualified as educators because they have been replaced by performers. The argument the show is making is that when the material gets too important for a regular teacher to deliver, the school brings in a mascot. And the moment a mascot is in the room, the actual teaching has already died. Look at what the show does with reading instruction. Hooked on Monkey Phonics, the 12th episode of season 3, aired on November 10th, 1999. Cartman's mother buys him a spelling kit that includes an actual monkey that plays a tiny drum set, while a tape narrates instructions for pronunciation. The monkey is supposed to help him learn phonics, which is a real method of reading instruction that was extremely popular in American schools in the 1990s. The whole kit is called Hooked on Monkey Phonics, a direct parody of the real educational brand Hooked on Phonics. And at the spelling bee, when it matters, the monkey does not perform its function. It masturbates. Cartman loses. The subplot of the episode involves two homeschooled children who end up arguing by the end that public school is actually necessary because it is where children learn social skills that cannot be taught through any curriculum. Put those 2 points next to each other. The curriculum is a masturbating monkey. The only actual value of school is the social skills the children pick up from each other, in the hallways, between classes, which means the show is, very carefully, telling you that the thing the school pretends is the core of its existence, the delivered curriculum, is a joke. And the thing the school barely pays attention to, the children's interactions with each other, is the only part that actually does anything. This pattern gets sharper in Go God Go, the 12th episode of season 10, which aired on November 1st, 2006. The story is a two-part parody of atheism and Richard Dawkins, but the part of the episode that lands for this argument is what happens in the classroom. Garrison, who is at this point in the show's timeline a woman, is forced by the school to teach evolution to her students. She does not want to. She believes in creationism. She hates the material. So she teaches it badly, with open contempt. And then later, after she starts dating Dawkins, she swings all the way to the other side and begins mocking any student who expresses a belief in God. The curriculum on evolution has not changed. What has changed is which personal belief Garrison is, in that week, importing into the classroom. The children are sitting in front of her, and the material they are absorbing is not the subject of biology. It is whatever is happening in her personal life. The official curriculum is a thin sheet of paper that floats on top of the actual curriculum, which is whoever the teacher is today. The show keeps returning to this idea in episode after episode that the official material is almost always less important than the hidden material that rides along with it. Sexual harassment training invents harassment lawsuits. Phonics programs use masturbating monkeys. Sex education hands children fear. Evolution lessons import creationism and back. Anti-drug presentations include the actual drugs being passed around the room. The curriculum in South Park's world is almost never neutral and almost never educational. It is a vehicle for whatever ideology, anxiety, or personal problem the adults have decided the children need to be hit with this week. And then there is the deepest cut of this whole argument, which is the one the show does not draw attention to, but which is there if you watch carefully. In Eek a Penis, the episode where Cartman becomes a substitute teacher, his entire teaching method is to show inner city students how to cheat on their standardized tests. The test scores go up, the school district is thrilled. The episode ends with Cartman being honored. Nobody in the school system notices that actual learning has not happened. The curriculum in the end is not really being measured. What is being measured is the numbers on a Scantron sheet, which Cartman has taught the children how to fill in without understanding the material. The show is saying, in this one short plot that the entire curriculum measurement system in American schools has already been defeated by a fourth grader with a sociopathic personality, because the measurement system was never actually measuring teaching in the first place. You can watch all of these episodes without making a connection between them. Most people do. You laugh at the panda, you laugh at the monkey, you cringe at the sex ed scenes, you move on. But if you line them up, you can see what South Park has been doing. The show is building a case that the curriculum is not the thing that redeems the school. The curriculum is one of the main things that makes the school harmful. The lessons, as delivered, very rarely help. They confuse, they scare, they mislead. They import the private problems of the adults into the public experience of the children. And the children, who cannot choose to leave, cannot choose to learn from a better source, cannot even always tell that what they are being taught is wrong, absorb all of it and carry it into their adult lives. There is one last detail in this that is worth noting before we move on. Every single one of the episodes I have just described was made more than 15 years ago. Proper condom use is from 2001. Sexual Harassment Panda is from 1999. Hooked on Monkey Phonics is from 1999. The youngest of these arguments is from 2006. The children who were 8 years old when these episodes first aired are now in their 30s. They are teachers. They are parents. They are administrators. They are the adults running the schools their own children are now sitting in. The arguments the show was making about the curriculum 25 years ago have not aged out of the conversation. They have aged into the people making the curriculum. The cycle the show was describing in 1999 is now the cycle its original viewers are participating in. This is what it means to say that the curriculum is a weapon. A weapon is not a thing that goes away when you put it down. A weapon is a thing that shapes the person who has used it, even after they stop carrying it. The children who absorbed South Park Elementary's curriculum are, in our world, grown. What they absorbed, they are now handing down. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. And if the curriculum is the weapon, then the classroom is the place where the weapon is used. Which means that the room itself, the physical space where all of this happens, is doing more than just holding desks. It is teaching its own lesson. The lesson the room has been teaching for the last decade has almost nothing to do with any lesson plan. It has to do with what the children have learned to ignore when the sound comes from the hallway. Section 5. Shooter down. Now let's move on. How the school became a war zone. There is a moment in the 22nd season of South Park that is worth stopping on, because it is the moment the show changes what it has been doing. For 21 seasons and more than 280 episodes, the classroom at South Park Elementary has been a place where jokes happen. Bad teachers stand at the front of it. Cartoon curriculum arrives to confuse the children. Mr. Mackey walks in with his MK and his pamphlets. The children sit through all of it. The classroom has been, through all of this, a comedy set, a fixed space where the show stages its best material. And then, on September 26th, 2018, the season 22 opener airs. It is called Dead Kids, and in its first 2 minutes, it stops being funny in the way the show has been funny for 2 decades and starts being something colder and sharper and harder to watch, even though the show never stops making jokes. The cold open is this. Mrs. Nelson is teaching math. The camera is on her. She is going over a test the children just took. Some of you did very well, she says. Many of you did not. She begins explaining the addition of fractions. The children are listening. Cartman is upset because he failed. Stan is sitting in his usual seat. Kyle and Kenny and Tolkien are there. It is, in every visible way, a normal classroom scene, the kind the show has opened with hundreds of times. And then, from the hallway outside, you hear the first gunshot. The camera does not cut. Mrs. Nelson does not flinch. She keeps teaching. You hear screaming. You hear more gunshots. You hear the sirens of the police arriving. You hear shouting from the hallway. A SWAT team member bursts through the classroom door, shouts at everyone to get down, and moves through the room looking for the shooter. Mrs. Nelson waits. The officer leaves. The gunfire continues outside. And then Mrs. Nelson says, calmly and without emotion, now let's move on to the next equation. And the children turn their attention back to their worksheets. The math class continues. The shooting in the hallway is, at most, a background noise. The argument of the episode is made right there, in the first scene, before any other plot has even started. What you are watching is a 4th grade teacher treating a school shooting as an interruption to a lesson. What you are watching is a 4th grade classroom that has learned to treat a school shooting as an interruption to a lesson. This is not a moment of satire that the show is building up to. This is the baseline reality that every other joke in the episode will be told on top of. And this is where the show's 25 years of staging classroom scenes pays off in a way nothing else in American television has ever been able to match. Because you, the viewer, know exactly what a normal South Park classroom looks like. You have watched hundreds of them. them. You know these desks, this chalkboard, this lighting, these kids. You know Cartman's seat. You know Stan's seat. Your brain has been trained across decades to receive this image as the place where comedy happens. And now the show is taking that exact image with all the cultural weight it has built up and laying a school shooting on top of it. The power of the scene is not in what is shown. The power of the scene is in what does not happen. In any other show, this moment is the climax. This is the episode. This is the emergency. In South Park, it is background. The real plot is that Cartman failed a math test. This is what it looks like when a show decides to stop satirizing a problem and start documenting it. To understand why Parker and Stone could do this and why it hit as hard as it did, you have to know something that does not come up often enough in discussions of the show. Matt Stone grew up in Littleton, Colorado. Trey Parker grew up in Evergreen, Colorado, which is in the same general area. Columbine High School is in Littleton. Columbine happened on April 20th, 1999, 2 years into the show's run. When Columbine happened, the two people making South Park were not distant entertainers watching a news story from Los Angeles. They were two Colorado kids whose hometown had just become the name of an event. The elementary school they were writing about, South Park Elementary, had been based in part on the elementary schools they had actually attended. The hometown of the characters was the state where the first modern school shooting of the internet age had happened. For 19 years after Columbine, the show almost never directly addressed it. You can watch the entire first 21 seasons and you will not find an episode called The School Shooting Episode. Parker and Stone, for almost 2 decades, refused to make the obvious thing. They would not do the special. They would not do the very serious episode. They waited. The question of what kind of show would let you have 19 years of classroom jokes in a state where Columbine happened, and then finally, in 2018, walk into that classroom with gunfire in the hallway and not even flinch is a real question. The answer is that the show was waiting until it could say something the rest of American television could not. The rest of American television, by 2018, had already developed its language for school shootings. It was the language of candles and teddy bears and tearful news anchors. It was the language of parents being interviewed and experts being consulted and officials giving statements and politicians offering thoughts and prayers and activists making speeches and the cycle starting again the next time. What South Park did in Dead Kids, and this is the part that is genuinely hard to watch even now, is refuse every single piece of that language. There are no candles. There are no speeches. There are no tearful montages. There are no heartfelt adult conversations. There are just the kids at their desks, the teacher moving on to the next equation, and the parents of the town wondering what is wrong with Sharon Marsh, who is the only adult in the episode who cannot absorb what is happening around her. Sharon is the key to the whole thing. Sharon is the mother of Stan. She has been in the show since the very first episode. She has, for most of the show's run, been the most sensible adult in the main cast. She is not funny in the way Randy is funny. She is the straight line, the realist, the one who rolls her eyes at Randy's nonsense and keeps the family together. In Dead Kids, Sharon cannot stop being upset about the shootings. She hears about each new one. She reacts to each one. She wants the other parents in town to be upset with her. She calls a meeting. She tries to get them to understand, and every single one of them, including her own husband, believes she is overreacting because of her period or her menopause or some other hormonal explanation that they have reached for because they cannot or will not engage with what she is actually saying. The one adult who still has the ability to feel grief about dead children is pathologized. The people around her decide she is sick instead of deciding they are the problem. The show is doing something mathematically precise here. It is showing you that in a society where school shootings have become routine, the emotional response to them is what gets labeled as dysfunction. Sharon is not crazy. Sharon is the only one behaving in a way that would make sense if you did not already live in a country that had broken. Everyone else has adjusted. The adjustment is the sickness, and Sharon, by refusing to adjust, has become the visible problem, because the invisible problem, the thing everyone else has made peace with, is the one nobody is willing to name out loud. The episode ends with the single most devastating moment in the show's 27-year run. Sharon, over the course of the half hour, has been slowly worn down. The town has spent the whole episode telling her she is hormonal. Her husband has had a whole side story about his fear that her emotions are ruining their marriage, and at the end, Sharon, tired, gives in. She apologizes to Randy. She tells him that he was probably right. Maybe it was her period. Maybe she was overreacting. Randy weeps with relief, and at that exact moment, Sharon gets a phone call. It is from the school. There has been another shooting. Stan has been shot. Sharon stands there, holding the phone. The audience braces. This is the moment she is supposed to break. This is the moment she is supposed to prove that she was right all along. This is the moment the episode is supposed to vindicate her. She does not break. She pauses, she breathes, and then she says quietly, no. It's not the end of the world. She has been beaten. She has accepted the adjustment. Her son has been shot, and the only emotional language she has left is the language of the town that told her she was broken for feeling anything in the first place. Randy is relieved. He is grateful. His wife is at last acting normal, and the episode ends. This is the ending of one of the most popular comedy shows in American television history. This is the show that gave you Mr. Hanky and Chef's Chocolate Salty Balls and the Underpants Gnomes, and it ends an episode with a mother being trained on camera to stop feeling anything about her son being shot. The joke is not on Sharon. The joke is on the country that made her this way. The joke is, in every possible sense, a national one. And when you widen the lens and look at what the school physically looks like in Dead Kids, the argument gets even sharper. After the first shooting, the school installs extra security. There are metal gates in the hallways. There are police dogs. And at the center of all of it, walking the halls as an armed hall monitor, is Butters, a 4th grade child, holding a gun. The show is showing you, without commentary, what American schools had actually started to do by the late 20-teens. The children are being armed. The children are being turned into part of the security apparatus of the building. The institution's response to its failure to protect them has been to hand them the responsibility of protecting themselves. Butters, standing in the hallway with a weapon, is not a joke the show has invented. He is a visual report on a real conversation happening in real school boards across the country in the years before and after the episode aired. The hallway is no longer a hallway. It is a security checkpoint. The classroom is no longer a classroom. It is a place to wait out whatever is happening outside. The teacher is no longer a teacher. She is a person trained to keep the lesson moving until the sirens stop. And the children are no longer children in the way the show used to understand them. They are participants in an emergency drill that never ends. If you remember, back in the first section, the show's original argument about Mr. Garrison. The argument was that the system was willing to keep him in the classroom because nobody above him had ever decided to stop it. That same logic, by the time you reach Dead Kids, has grown into something much larger than a single teacher. The system will keep the school open through mass violence because nobody above it has decided to stop it. The doors will open on Monday, the lesson will continue, the gunfire will be background, and the adults will find a way every time to explain to anyone who still feels anything that what they are feeling is the wrong feeling, that the real problem is not what they are seeing, that they should probably sit down and have a glass of water and calm down. The show's entire 25-year case against American schools converges on this one episode. The teachers do not teach, the counselors do not counsel, the curriculum is a weapon, and now, on top of all of that, the room itself has become a place where children can be killed while the math lesson continues. This is not escalation for the sake of escalation. This is the show finishing an argument it started a long time ago. The argument is that the institution is not, and has never been, primarily concerned with the safety or the education of the children inside it. The institution is primarily concerned with the institution, and when the safety of the children and the continuation of the institution come into conflict, the institution will, every single time, choose to continue. There is one more turn in this that is worth noticing. Dead Kids aired in 2018. It is, at the time of this writing, 7 years old, and in the years since, the show has not revisited the school shooting premise in the same way. It did not need to. The episode said what it had to say. The classroom the show has drawn 1,000 times has now been marked, permanently, by the image of Mrs. Nelson moving on to the next equation. Every scene in that classroom since carries that image underneath it, whether the show references it or not. You cannot unsee it. The math lesson continues. The gunshots continue. The children continue. That is the baseline now. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. And if the baseline is that the children have been trained to survive the building, then the next question the show spends years exploring is what happens when the danger is not coming from the hallway at all? What happens when the danger is sitting at the desk next to you? What happens when the school has decided that the solution to that problem is an adult industry of training videos and assemblies and celebrity speakers and viral campaigns, all designed to protect children from each other in a way that just happens to make a lot of people a lot of money? The show has a name for this. It is called the bully economy, and it has been running, quietly, underneath the school for most of the show's entire existence. Section 6. The bully economy. How anti-bullying became another product. Every adult in America has a story about being bullied in school. For a long long time, that was just the end of the sentence. You were bullied, you survived it, you grew up, and if you were lucky, the person who bullied you ended up worse off than you did. Nobody made a movie about it. Nobody made an assembly about it. Nobody made a foundation about it. It was a thing that happened in hallways, and then it was over. That is not the world anymore. Somewhere in the last 20 years, bullying became an industry. It became a topic that adults, not children, talk about. It became the subject of documentaries and TED Talks and viral videos and celebrity speeches and school assemblies and training sessions and federal grants. Anti-bullying became a word. Bully prevention became a job. There are now adults in America whose entire paycheck depends on bullying continuing to be a problem that can be fixed by more adult programs about it. South Park noticed this before most of the country did, and the show's argument about it is one of the most quietly cynical things it has ever built. The argument is simple. The anti-bullying industry is itself a bullying mechanism. The adults who have made careers out of stopping bullying are not, it turns out, on the side of the children. They are on the side of whatever will keep their careers going. And the children, who were being bullied before any of this started, are being used as raw material for an economy that has grown up around their suffering. The clearest version of this case is an episode called Butterballs, the 5th episode of season 16, which aired on April 11th, 2012. The plot starts with Butters walking around school with a black eye. He has been bullied. His friends find out and try to help. Stan, who is at that point in the show's timeline a 4th grader, decides he is going to solve bullying. He is going to make a viral video. The video is going to be so powerful that bullying itself will be embarrassed out of existence. His slogan is, "Make bullying kill itself." The video involves Cartman in a dress and Butters paraded naked in front of the camera. Stan does not notice how cruel the video itself is because the video is about being anti-bullying, and anti-bullying, in Stan's mind, automatically cancels out any cruelty he might commit in the name of it. A Hollywood studio offers to buy the video. Stan is thrilled. Kyle is not. Kyle walks away from the project. Kyle points out that Stan has made himself the center of an anti-bullying campaign instead of actually helping the kid who was bullied. Kyle tells Stan that he is going to end up, and the phrase is a direct reference to a real 2012 scandal involving a filmmaker named Jason Russell, naked and jacking it in San Diego. Stan does not understand the reference. He goes to San Diego anyway. He has a public mental breakdown. He strips, he dances, he becomes the joke. The episode's real emotional core, though, is not Stan. It is Butters, and it is Butters' grandmother. Because in the middle of the episode, the show reveals something that changes the meaning of the whole story. The person bullying Butters is not another child. It is his grandmother. She has been doing it for years. She calls him names, she steals his lunch money. She is an old woman who has decided that torturing her grandson is what keeps her interested in being alive. Butters does not know how to fight back. His parents are not paying attention. The school is not paying attention. The viral video campaign is not paying attention. Because the viral video campaign is about bullying in the abstract, and the actual bully in Butters' life is a 70-year-old woman in his own living room. At the end of the episode, Butters stands in front of his grandmother and he gives one of the most striking speeches the show has ever put in the mouth of a child. He tells her, calmly, that he has figured her out. He understands now that bullies are real. He understands they are not going away. He understands that life is going to be hard and that she is going to keep trying to hurt him, but that one day he is going to grow up. He is going to grow up and she is going to die in a hospital bed, empty and alone, and he is going to be there just to show her that he is still alive and he is happy and she lost. He does not yell at her. He does not cry. He just tells her plainly what is going to happen. The grandmother has no response. What makes this speech devastating is that it is the show, through Butters, refusing the whole premise of the anti-bullying industry. The industry's premise is that bullying can be fixed by adult programs. Butters' speech is the opposite. Butters says bullying is a real thing about the world that cannot be canceled by a viral video. He is going to survive it by outlasting it, by growing up, by living his life, by letting time, not a campaign, do the work. The grandmother will die. Butters will not. That is the whole answer. The show is saying that the honest thing to tell a bullied child is not that a celebrity is going to save them. It is that they are going to outlive the people who hurt them, and that is what winning is going to look like. But the industry in the episode does not stop. Stan's meltdown in San Diego does not end the viral campaign. The machine keeps running. The show's point is that the machine was never about Butters in the first place. Now put that episode next to Bass to Mouth, which we already talked about in an earlier section, but is worth coming back to through this lens. That episode aired on October 19th, 19th, 2011 in the 10th episode of season 15. It tells you something that changes how you see every schoolyard scene before it. The episode reveals, as a casual piece of history, that Cartman had bullied a student named Corey Duran the year before. Cartman had spread a story that Corey had defecated in his pants in class. The bullying was so severe that Corey had killed himself. A child, in the world of the show, had taken his own life because of what Cartman had done to him. The faculty knew. They had known the whole time. And nothing had happened to Cartman. He had continued attending the school. He had continued bullying other students. In the current episode, another student, Jenny Simons, attempts suicide by jumping off the school roof after a similar incident, and she barely survives. The faculty's response to all of this, as we covered before, is to hire Cartman as the solution, because Cartman is the best tool they have for controlling what the children pay attention to. They do not expel him. They do not even seriously discipline him. They work with him. The one clear bully in the school, the one child the entire staff knows has driven another child to suicide, is kept around because the institution has decided he is useful. This is the show's argument at its bleakest. The real bully is not the problem the school is trying to solve. The real bully is one of the school's staff in everything but name. And then the argument sharpens again in Safe Space, the 5th episode of season 19, which aired on October 21st, 2015. Cartman posts a shirtless picture of himself online and gets mean comments. PC Principal, who we will talk about fully in the next section, assigns a student to filter out all the negative comments so Cartman only sees the positive ones. Kyle refuses. Wendy refuses. Both get 2 weeks of detention. Butters agrees because if he gets detention, his parents will ground him. So Butters is given the job of reading every single cruel comment aimed at Cartman by himself and removing them, so Cartman can live in a version of the internet where only nice things are said about him. Then PC Principal adds more people: Steven Seagal, Vin Diesel, Demi Lovato, plus-size models. Butters is now filtering all of their negative comments too. He is doing it alone. He is not sleeping. The show has a musical number about the safe space where these celebrities now get to live, with Butters as the one keeping the safe space safe. A character called Reality shows up to complain that nobody is allowed to feel anything negative anymore. The campaign to give celebrities emotional protection has, as its actual engine, one small child being worked to the edge of his life. Butters starts hallucinating. He snaps at school. He jumps out a window. He survives, but barely. The response of the town is not to stop the campaign. The response is to ship iPads to starving children in poor countries so that those children can take over the filtering job for Butters. The safe space is preserved. The problem is outsourced. The children paying the emotional cost are moved somewhere the cameras are not looking. The industry keeps running. You can line these 3 episodes up like a timeline. Butterballs is 2012, Bass to Mouth is 2011, Safe Space is 2015. That is a 4-year window during which South Park made the same argument 3 different ways. The argument is that the adult machinery built to protect children from cruelty is not actually oriented toward the children. It is oriented toward the machinery. Its real output is not less bullying. Its real output is more campaigns, more products, more assemblies, more documentaries, more jobs for the people running the campaigns. The children, the actual children the whole thing is supposedly for, are the raw material. Their pain is the feedstock. Their attention is the audience. Their bodies are the ones showing up to the assembly. Their names are on the pamphlets. And here is the part that connects back to everything we have been building. Notice who keeps being the one who pays. Butters. In Butterballs, Butters is the kid being bullied, paraded naked in a viral video, and ultimately mostly ignored by the industry that was supposedly built for him. In Safe Space, Butters is the kid made to read every cruel comment in the world, driven to a suicide attempt, and replaced by starving children. In the Bass to Mouth sequence of school bullying episodes, Butters is, again and again, the most visible target in the school. The show has, across a decade, used one specific child to make one specific argument. The anti-bullying industry does not help the Butters of the world. It uses them. It always has. The final, saddest move in this whole arc is what the show does with Butters himself across these episodes. Butters never stops believing that the adults are going to help him. He agrees to every assignment. He smiles for every viral video. He does not fight back. He takes the bully money from his grandmother. He does the filtering job for PC Principal. He keeps showing up. He keeps trying. He is the only character in the show who represents what the anti-bullying industry claims to be protecting, which is an innocent child who deserves better. And he is also the character the industry most consistently fails. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. seriously. If the anti-bullying industry does not actually protect children, then the question is, who it is actually protecting? Who is it really working for? And the answer the show is about to hand you is the answer it has been building toward since 2015. The answer sits in the largest office in the school. The answer wears sunglasses indoors. The answer has a word attached to its title that it has spent years trying to turn into an institution. And the answer is the most quietly studied character in the entire back half of the show's run. Section 7. PC Principal and the Administrator as Ideology. For the first 18 seasons of South Park, the principal of the school is a woman named Principal Victoria. She is one of the oldest characters in the show. She has red hair. She wears a purple dress. She has a quiet, calm voice. And when she appears in a scene, she almost never raises it. She is not a villain. She is not a joke. She is, in the language of the show, a type of adult we have all met. She is the administrator who wants things to be calm. She wants the paperwork done. She wants the complaints to go away. She does not want to think about what is actually happening inside her own building, because if she thought about it, she would have to do something about it. For 18 seasons, the show uses her to make a specific argument. The argument is that the principal of an American public school is, in practice, a person whose job is to keep the building running, not to care for the children inside it. She does not fire Mr. Garrison when he performs explicit sex acts in his classroom. She does not protect the students from Mr. Mackey's drug cluelessness. She does not notice that Cartman has, by the time we get to season 15, driven another child to suicide. She signs the forms. She issues the statements. She keeps the doors open on Monday. That is the job. And then, in the opening episode of season 19, which aired on September 16th, 2015, the show does something that nobody was expecting. It fires her. The episode is called Stunning and Brave. Mr. Mackey announces to a school assembly that Principal Victoria has been let go. A student had referred to rape as a hot Cosby, and the school board, according to Mackey, has decided that her administration is not progressive enough for the modern world. In her place, he introduces a new principal. The new principal wears sunglasses indoors. He is extremely muscular. He is in his 30s. He speaks in the language of a college fraternity brother. He calls everyone bro. His actual name, revealed much later in the season 23 episode Board Girls, is Peter Charles, but nobody ever calls him that. He goes by 2 letters and a title, PC Principal. The letters, obviously, stand for politically correct. That is the first and loudest joke of the character. He is the administrator as a social justice warrior, a parody of a certain kind of campus culture that was dominating American college campuses in 2015. But if you only read him as that joke, you are going to miss the biggest thing the show is about to do with him, which is that Parker and Stone are about to spend years quietly turning him into something much more interesting than a political punchline. They are, in fact, about to make him the most closely studied administrator in the show's entire history. Start with what he does in his first episode. He assaults Cartman. Not a joke assault, not a cartoon assault, a real beating. Cartman uses the word spokesman instead of spokesperson, and PC Principal corners him in the school bathroom and beats him so badly that Cartman ends up in the hospital. The show is being clear about who he is. He is a man whose idea of progressive values is enforced through violence against children. He has a fraternity. His fraternity is made up of grown men, most of them apparently in their 30s, who have decided their mission in life is to police the language of 4th graders. They hold parties, they drink, they beat people up. They are, every visible way the show can make it, a gang, wearing the clothes of activism. Trey Parker received an Emmy nomination for voicing PC Principal in Stunning and Brave. The character was originally designed as a 1-episode joke. Parker and Stone had intended to kill him off at the end of the episode. They liked him so much, the story goes, that they decided to keep him. And the moment they decided to keep him, they had a problem that turned out to be a gift. Because now they had to figure out who this man actually was when he stopped being a punchline. Across the rest of season 19, they quietly did it. By the 8th episode, Sponsored Content, which aired on November 18th, 2015, PC Principal is no longer quite the villain. A different villain has emerged in the show, one made of online advertising and algorithms and artificial people, and PC Principal is actually one of the characters fighting it. By the 10th episode of the season, PC Principal Final Justice, he is the one who saves the town. The man who arrived as a parody of a certain kind of ideology has become, over 10 episodes, a complicated person with a real job and real weaknesses. He is still ridiculous. He still wears the sunglasses. He still talks like a fraternity brother, but he is no longer a joke. He is an administrator, trying in his very weird way to do the job. This is what most people miss about PC Principal. They remember him from his first episode. They remember the assault. They They remember the sunglasses. They do not always remember what the show has done with him since. Because in season 20, when Garrison becomes president of the United States in the episode Oh Geez, PC Principal is, by the logic of the show, partly responsible. His ideological overreach across season 19 helped create the cultural backlash that elected a Garrison. The show knows this. PC Principal knows this. And there is a scene later in the arc where Garrison, now president, forces PC Principal into a humiliating act of submission. The joke is extreme, even for the show, but the point is not the joke. The point is that PC Principal now has to live with the knowledge that what he spent a season doing helped break the country. The administrator has consequences. The ideology has costs. He is not exempt. By season 23, in the episode Bored Girls, which aired in late 2019, PC Principal has been married. His wife is a character named Strong Woman. They have 5 babies, together referred to as the PC babies. The show has, with a completely straight face, given the character the most complete family life of any adult at the school. He has a wedding. He has children. He has responsibilities. And in the Bored Girls episode, when Strong Woman is in crisis, PC Principal cries. The man who once beat Cartman into a hospital bed sheds a tear over his wife. You are watching, in real time, a character who was drawn as a parody of angry political correctness get turned into a person. That is not something the show does often. The show's usual move is to flatten characters into their jokes. PC Principal is one of the very few it has chosen to round out instead. And now, in the most recent seasons of the show, something new has happened to him. In season 27, episode Gotta Nut, the country has gone through another Trump presidency in the world of the show, and PC Principal has changed again. He is still the principal, but the PC in his name no longer stands for what it used to. He is now referred to within the show as Power Christian Principal. The same man, the same muscles, the same sunglasses, but the ideology has been swapped out. His fraternity has been replaced. He is now enforcing a different cultural script. He fires Mr. Mackey as part of a budget cut. He replaces Mackey with Jesus Christ, who becomes the new school counselor. PC Principal himself has not fundamentally changed. What has changed is the political weather around him, and he has, like any good administrator, simply rotated his sails to catch whatever wind is currently blowing. This is the argument the show has been making with him all along, and it is one of the sharpest arguments the show has ever made about American institutions. The argument is that the principal of a school is not an ideology. The principal of a school is a person who takes on whatever ideology is currently powerful. PC Principal was a perfectly convincing social justice warrior in 2015. He is a perfectly convincing Christian nationalist in 2025. The voice is the same. The body is the same. The office is the same. The thing he enforces changes, because the job is not to believe in anything. The job is to enforce. Whatever the culture has decided the rules are this year, the principal will enforce those rules, and he will enforce them with the same energy and the same violence he used for the last set of rules. And this is where the show's case against the administrator becomes impossible to argue with. Principal Victoria was the administrator who did nothing. She let everything happen. She did not enforce anything. Her failure was passive. PC Principal is the opposite failure, and they are, it turns out, two faces of the same coin. Her failure was that she did not act. His failure is that he will act on behalf of anyone. She let the children be harmed because she could not be bothered. He will harm the children himself if the current ideology tells him to. Neither of them is about the children. Both of them are about the position. There is one more detail about PC Principal that is worth stopping on because it tells you something about how the show sees him that most analysis misses. He keeps the sunglasses on indoors, always, in every scene, at weddings, at dinner, in his office, in the bathroom. The show almost never shows his eyes. This is not a small choice. When a character wears sunglasses in every scene of their life, it means something. It means the character cannot be read. You cannot see what he thinks. You cannot see when he is afraid. You cannot see when he is uncertain. He can enforce anything because he has trained himself to never visibly react to what he is being asked to enforce. The sunglasses are the uniform of the administrator. They are the face you wear when the job of your position is to carry out any order the institution hands you, and to never ever let anyone see you doubt it. If you remember, back when we talked about Mr. Garrison, the argument was that nobody above him ever decided to stop him. The person above him for most of the show's run was Principal Victoria, and she did not care. The person above him now is PC Principal, and he will care about whatever he is told to care about this week. In both cases, the result is the same. Garrison is still in the classroom. classroom. The children are still sitting in front of him. The administrator is still in the office down the hall. The paperwork is still getting signed, and the decision that never gets made, the decision to actually stop any of this, the decision to protect a child by removing an adult who is harming them, is a decision the office does not know how to make. It is not in the job description. It never was. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. And once you understand that the office at the top of the school works this way, you start to see the whole building differently. The school is not, and has never been, a neutral educational environment. It is a political place. Every rule is a political decision. Every enforcement is a political act. Every assembly is a political performance. And if the school is a political place, then the children sitting in its classrooms are not really being taught math. They are being taught how to live inside a political world they did not choose. Which means the classroom itself, the space where all of this happens, might not actually be a classroom in any meaningful sense. It might be something else. Something the show has been hinting at for decades every time it lets a 4th grade class reenact an American presidential election, or stage a government conspiracy, or hold a town hall meeting about a fake problem the adults cannot stop arguing about. The classroom, it turns out, has been something else this whole time. Section 8. The classroom as political theater, from Trapper Keeper to the election cycle. Here is something you may not have noticed if you have only watched South Park casually. The 4th grade classroom at South Park Elementary is one of the most politically active spaces in American television history. Not metaphorically, literally. Elections happen in it. Presidential debates happen in it. Conspiracy theories are born in it. Campaign advertisements are tested in it. Government cover-ups are staged in it. Over the course of the show's run, the classroom has hosted, in miniature, almost every major political event in modern American life. The adults in the show think they are running the country. The show keeps arguing episode after episode that the country is actually being run by people with exactly the same emotional maturity as the children in Garrison's class, and that if you want to understand what is happening in Washington, the most honest place to look is not the news, it is the classroom. The clearest and earliest example of this is an episode called Trapper Keeper, which aired on November 15th, 2000 as the 12th episode of season 4. The title refers to a real piece of school supplies that was popular with American children from the 1970s through the 1990s. A brightly colored loose leaf binder used to carry homework. The episode uses it as a science fiction plot device, but that is not the part that matters here. The part that matters is the subplot. The subplot is this. Garrison has, at this point in the show's timeline, been demoted to teaching kindergarten. In his class, the children are going to hold an election to choose a class president. Kyle's little brother Ike is running against another small child named Fillmore. The kindergartners cast their votes. 6 of them vote for Ike. 6 of them vote for Fillmore. The deciding vote is held by a little girl named Flora. Flora cannot make up her mind. She stands there for what feels like an eternity inside the episode, trying to decide between the two candidates. She flip-flops. She says Ike, she says Fillmore, she changes her mind. The other children wait. Garrison gets angry. And then, because the election is not resolving quickly, Fillmore's supporters demand a recount. They call in lawyers. They call in Rosie O'Donnell. They call in Jesse Jackson. Teams of adults in suits arrive in the kindergarten classroom carrying briefcases, holding meetings, filing paperwork, staging a prolonged and completely paralyzed election dispute. If you lived through November of the year 2000, you already know exactly what this is. This episode aired during the exact period when the United States presidential election between George W. Bush and Al Gore was tied up in a recount in Florida. The Supreme Court was about to decide who had won. The state was recounting ballots by hand. Rosie O'Donnell, in real life, had signed a petition calling for a new vote. Jesse Jackson, in real life, had traveled to Florida to protest. The show was mapping every single piece of the national election onto a kindergarten class in real time as it was happening. The girl is named Flora because the state is called Florida. Garrison, exhausted by the squabbling, finally yells the line that the whole episode has been building toward. He says, "You are all acting like a bunch of kids." That is the argument of the whole episode, delivered in one sentence by a cartoon character wearing a teacher's shirt and screaming at grown lawyers in a room full of 5-year-olds. The presidential election of the United States of America was, in 2000, a kindergarten fight. The adults were the children. The children were the adults. The voting procedures were the same. The emotional intensity was the same. The stakes were the same. The only difference was the paper size of the ballots. Parker and Stone are not being cute here. They are saying plainly that the national political process is not adult. It is childish. And the only way to see it clearly is to stage it where it belongs, in a kindergarten classroom, with crayons, and watch how ridiculous ridiculous it actually looks. The show did this again and harder 4 years later in an episode called Douche and Turd, which aired on October 27th, 2004 as the 8th episode of season 8. This time the setup is even simpler. South Park Elementary needs a new school mascot because the old one has been replaced. The students are asked to vote. Cartman, trolling everyone, has nominated a giant douche. Kyle, exhausted by Cartman, has nominated a turd sandwich. The entire school has to choose between the two. Stan refuses. He does not want to vote for either. Both choices are terrible. Both candidates are insulting. He sees no meaningful difference between the options, and he says so. For refusing to vote, he is exiled from the town. That episode aired less than a week before the 2004 presidential election between George W. Bush and John Kerry. The show is not making the connection subtle. It is saying that the American electoral system regularly presents voters with two options that both seem like obvious problems, and then tells those voters that refusing to pick one of them is itself a moral failure. The classroom mascot election and the national presidential election are, in Stan's eyes, the same event. A choice between two things that should not be choices. The children of South Park Elementary are being asked to do exactly what their parents are being asked to do. Pick a turd sandwich or a giant douche. Do it with enthusiasm. Pretend it matters. The show then goes somewhere darker in Mystery of the Urinal Deuce, which aired on October 11th, 2006 as the 9th episode of season 10. This time, the classroom is not the staging ground for a political election. It is the staging ground for the birth of a political conspiracy theory. Someone at South Park Elementary has defecated in a urinal in the boys' bathroom. Mr. Mackey, for reasons the show treats as inexplicably intense, decides to investigate. Cartman, for his own reasons, decides that this event is exactly like the September 11th attacks. He becomes convinced the urinal incident is a conspiracy, and then, crucially, he decides that Kyle is responsible, not just for the urinal, but for 9/11 itself. What happens next is one of the most exact satires of how conspiracy theories actually spread that American television has ever produced. Cartman goes home. He researches 9/11 on the internet. He comes back to school. He gives a show and tell presentation in front of the class. He uses a PowerPoint-style slideshow. He presents evidence. His evidence is that Kyle scored a 91 on a spelling test 12 days after the September 11th attacks, and a 91 is close to 9/11, which means Kyle is connected. He shows the class a crude drawing of Kyle floating in the sky next to the World Trade Center with a knife. He walks the class through his math, and the children, his classmates, all of them, start to believe him. Because he presented it in a formal way, using the format of a school report, the children begin to treat his claims as legitimate research. The idea moves from one deeply strange child's private theory to the official position of an entire 4th grade class. It happens in one class period. This is where South Park quietly tells you what it thinks a classroom actually is. A classroom is not a place where knowledge is transmitted from an informed adult to curious children. A classroom is a place where any presentation in a formal format starts to feel true. That is the mechanism the show is exposing. Cartman is not teaching the children facts. He is performing the shape of a lesson. He has a slideshow. He has numbers. He has a confident voice. He is doing what a teacher does, which the show has been arguing for 7 years by this point is mostly performance anyway. And because the format is the thing and not the content, the children receive his nonsense exactly the way they would receive a real lesson. They write it down. They believe it. They avoid Kyle in the hallways. The conspiracy is now part of the school's shared reality, and it got there through a show and tell. This is not a coincidence. The show keeps returning to the format. When it wants to satirize a cable news debate, it stages one in the classroom. When it wants to satirize a town hall, it stages a school assembly. When it wants to satirize a political campaign, it runs a class president race. The classroom in the show's world is where the country actually is. The White House is a set. Congress is a set. The cable news studios are sets. The actual political life of the country is happening in a room full of children who have been taught, by adults who do not really know anything, to listen to whoever speaks with the most confidence. What makes this argument so sharp is that the show does not need you to recognize every specific reference to get the point. You do not have to remember what Bush versus Gore was. You do not have to remember the Florida recount. You do not have to know who Rosie O'Donnell is. The shape of the episode still works because the shape is the argument. A kindergarten class holding a lengthy and bitter election is funny on its own. A 4th grade conspiracy theory is funny on its own. Cartman's PowerPoint is funny on its own. The specific political event being parodied is, in a way, beside the point. The point is that the show, every single time, reaches for the classroom as the place where these events happen, because the classroom is the honest location of American political life. Everything else is adults pretending they are not still in school. There is one more thing this argument does that is worth noticing. It changes what the classroom means when you rewatch the earlier seasons. Once you have seen Trapper Keeper, you cannot unsee the kindergarten as a miniature country. Once you have seen Mystery of the Urinal Deuce, you cannot unsee the classroom as a place where theories become real. Once you have seen Douche and Turd, you cannot unsee the school mascot election as a national vote. And that changes every classroom scene from season 1 onward. Every single time the children sit in Garrison's class, the show is not just doing a school joke. It is showing you, under the school joke, a tiny version of the country the children will grow up to run. Which means, and this is the move the show has been setting up for the last 30 years, that the children are not learning civics by being taught about it. They are learning civics by living inside a miniature version of it every day. They absorb the shape of the government by sitting in a class that holds elections. They absorb the shape of the court system by sitting in a class where students sue each other. They absorb the shape of the news media by sitting in a class where show and tell works exactly like cable news. They are not being prepared for adult political life by the curriculum. They are being rehearsed for it, against their will, by the structure of the classroom itself. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. And all of this, every single piece of it, converges on one central student. The child who learned the lessons, the child who absorbed the classroom, the child who took everything the school was actually teaching, not officially, not on paper, but in the hidden curriculum of power and performance and cruelty, and internalized every single word of it. The school has spent 30 years insisting that its problem students are its problem. The show has been quietly arguing for exactly as long that its best student is also its product, and his name at this point in the conversation should not be a surprise. Section 9. Cartman is the product, what the school actually teaches. There is a way to watch Eric Cartman that most people use, and it is understandable because the show encourages it. He is the villain. He is the cruel one. He is the character who does the worst things. He is the reason you cannot show South Park in a middle school classroom. He is the show's bad kid. He is the problem. And if you watch him that way, every episode makes sense. Cartman does something terrible. The other children react. The adults fail to stop him. The credits roll. But if you have been paying attention to the last 8 sections of this video, you already have the information you need to see him differently. Because when you lay Cartman's behavior next to everything the school has been doing for 25 years, a very uncomfortable question starts to form. The question is not why Cartman is the way he is. The question is why Cartman is exactly what you would expect South Park Elementary to produce if you took everything the school has taught him seriously and followed the lessons through. Think about what Cartman has actually learned in that building. From Mr. Garrison, he has learned that cruelty in front of children is acceptable because the adult doing it will not be fired. From Mr. Mackey, he has learned that adult concern is a performance and that every serious emotional situation can be reduced to a catchphrase and a pamphlet. From the sex education episodes, he has learned that the adults do not know what they are talking about and that the most confident voice in the room wins, regardless of whether what it is saying is true. From the mascot assemblies, he has learned that a lesson is not about its content, it is about its costume. From Principal Victoria, he has learned that the administrator will not intervene as long as the paperwork is fine. From PC Principal, he has learned that the administrator will intervene, but only for the current ideology, and that ideologies change. From the anti-bullying industry, he has learned that the entire language of protecting children can be used, with no effort at all, as a weapon against them. From the classroom political theater, he has learned that any performance in the shape of a lesson will be received as true. Cartman is not failing to learn the school's lessons. He is learning them better than any other child in the building. He is the star pupil. The clearest proof of this is the episode Miss Teacher Bangs a Boy, which we talked about back in section 2, but which takes on a different meaning in this section. In that episode, Cartman is made the school's hall monitor. Principal Victoria hands him a yellow sash and tells him he has authority, and the moment he has it, he becomes, in his own words, the dog. He turns himself into a version of Dog the Bounty Hunter, complete with a beard and a can of bear mace. He stalks the hallways. He beats up children for small infractions. He demands hall passes at the point of violence. He is not abusing his authority in an unusual way. He is, instead, modeling exactly what he has seen authority do inside that building for his entire life. He has watched PC Principal beat up a student over a word choice. He has watched teachers humiliate students in front of classes. classes. He has watched adults use their positions to work out their personal issues in public. When the school hands him a small piece of that power, he does with it what he has been taught to do with it. He enforces. The show is saying something specific here. When you hand a child authority inside an institution that has modeled authority as cruelty, the child will be cruel. This is not a moral failure on the child's part. This is successful transmission. The school has taught this lesson. Cartman has learned it. He is not breaking the system by becoming a tiny monster in a yellow sash. He is completing the system. He is its graduate. Then look at what happens in Eek, a Penis, which aired on April 9th, 2008 as the 5th episode of season 12. This is the episode where Cartman temporarily takes over Mr. Garrison's 4th grade class and then later gets reassigned to an inner city school. As a teacher, Cartman does exactly what a teacher in South Park has always done. He performs. He stands at the front of the room. He looks confident. He speaks with authority, and what he teaches explicitly is how to cheat. He gives the children strategies. He shows them how to copy from each other. He shows them how to look at the answer key. The test scores go up. The children pass. The school system rewards him. He is celebrated as a great teacher. The episode is, by the creator's own admission, a parody of Stand and Deliver, the 1988 film about a real teacher named Jaime Escalante who taught his Los Angeles students advanced math and got them to pass national calculus exams. In that real story, the students were briefly accused of cheating precisely because their scores had gone up so much. In Cartman's version of the story, the students actually are cheating, and nobody can tell the difference. The system's measurement tools, which are supposed to separate real learning from fake learning, cannot do that job. The paperwork is in order. The numbers are up. Cartman wins. What makes this episode so important is that it reveals something the show has been hinting at for years. The school's measurement system cannot detect whether actual learning has happened. It can only detect whether the right answers have been written on the right lines. A sociopath who teaches cheating produces the same measurable output as a master teacher who changes lives. The institution cannot tell them apart, and Cartman, who has absorbed this truth completely, has figured out the only thing worth learning from his school, which is that appearance is everything and content is nothing. The lesson worked. He is the lesson. Now look at Bass to Mouth again, but through this lens. In that episode, the school administrators, the same people whose job is to stop bullying and protect children, hire Cartman to stop a bullying crisis. Think about the depth of what this means. The adults know that Cartman has driven another child to suicide. They know his methods, they know his cruelty, and they do not treat him as the problem, they treat him as the solution. They believe correctly that the only tool effective enough to stop the embarrassment crisis is Cartman himself, because Cartman has, across years of classroom time, become more skilled at managing and weaponizing the student body than any adult in the building. The school does not have a problem with Cartman. The school has a relationship with Cartman. He is their subcontractor. They use his skills when they need to, and the only reason they occasionally have to distance themselves from him in public is that his methods are slightly too visible for the administration to formally endorse. This is the darkest version of the school's lesson. Cartman has not just absorbed the cruelty of the adults, he has become so good at it that the adults now rely on him to do the cruelty they cannot publicly do themselves. He is their attack dog. He is their tool. He is the graduate who has come back to the school and made himself useful. And in return, the school continues to protect him. He continues to attend. He continues to bully. He continues to survive in the institution because the institution, whether it admits it or not, needs him. And then finally, look at what Cartman is doing in Dead Kids, the school shooting episode. The classroom is under active fire. The SWAT team is moving through the hallway. Students are screaming, and Cartman is focused with total intensity on the fact that he failed a math test. He has copied Tolkien's answers and still failed. He spends the entire episode trying to prove that Tolkien manipulated the test somehow. The shooting is background noise to him. Another child's death is less important than his grade. That is not a new personality trait. That is the final, perfected form of the lesson the school has been teaching him. The math test matters. The gunfire does not. The measurement matters. The life does not. You can watch that episode and be horrified at Cartman, and most people are, but the horror at Cartman is, on some level, a misdirection. The horror you should be feeling is at the fact that Cartman has, correctly, identified which of those two things the school system he attends actually cares about. The school has taught him that test scores are the central measurement of his worth. The school has taught him, through its response to every previous tragedy, that the institution continues regardless of who dies. He has absorbed both lessons. He is reacting to the shooting the way the institution has taught him to react. The institution cares about the math test. Cartman cares about the math test. The institution is not upset about the gunfire. Cartman is not upset about the gunfire. He is not a failure of the education system in that moment. He is its perfect representative. This This is the deepest cut of the show's argument about schools, and it is the one people miss most often because it sits underneath decades of jokes. The argument is that Eric Cartman is not the bad kid the school failed to fix. Eric Cartman is the product the school produces when it functions as designed. Every cruelty he commits, every manipulation he performs, every act of bullying or theft or violence can be traced back to a lesson the school actually modeled for him. The teacher's indifference, the counselor's empty concern, the principal's enforcement without values, the curriculum's use of fear to control behavior, the anti-bullying industry's performance of care, the classroom's political theater. Every one of these has landed in Cartman. He is the final form. He is what it looks like when an American child absorbs, without filter, everything his school actually teaches him as opposed to what his school claims to teach him. And notice, and this is the last move of this argument, that the show has never let Cartman leave. He has been in 4th grade for more than 20 years of our time. He has not graduated, he has not moved on, he has been kept in the same building by the same institution with the same peers across 3 decades of showtime. The school has not fixed him, the school has not expelled him, the school has not changed him in any meaningful way. He is, every September, Monday morning, back at his desk. Same jacket, same voice, same cruelty. The institution has shaped itself around him at this point. He is a permanent feature of the classroom, the way the chalkboard is. The show, by refusing to let him grow up, is showing you that he has become part of the school itself. You cannot remove him. He is what the school now is. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Which raises the final question this entire video has been moving toward, and which we have to answer in the last section. If Cartman is what the school produces, and the school has been producing him for more than 25 years, and the other children in that classroom have been absorbing exactly the same lessons at exactly the same time, then what exactly has South Park been showing us about a whole generation of American schooling? Because the boys in that class are not just fictional characters. They are the same age the show's original viewers were when the show started, and those viewers are now in their 30s. They are parents, they are teachers, they are principals. They are in the classrooms their own children sit in. And the show, it turns out, has not been making a comedy about a school for 28 years. It has been doing something else the whole time. And it is time to name what. Section 10. 25 years in 4th grade. The verdict. There is a fact about South Park that gets mentioned so often it has stopped feeling strange, but it is worth stopping on one more time, because nothing else in this entire video quite lands without it. The fact is this: the boys have not grown up. Stan, Kyle, Cartman, Kenny, Butters, Tolkien, Jimmy, Timmy, Wendy, BB, all of them. They have been in 4th grade since the year 2000. The show jumped them up from 3rd grade to 4th grade at the start of season 4. Since then, more than 2 decades of real time have passed. Bush has come and gone, Obama has come and gone, Trump has come and gone and come back. The internet went from dial-up to smartphones to artificial intelligence. Columbine happened. Virginia Tech happened. Sandy Hook happened. Parkland happened. Uvalde happened. An entire generation of real American children started kindergarten, graduated high school, went to college, got jobs, had children of their own. And in South Park, Eric Cartman is still 9. Most people treat this as a quirk of the format. It is easier to keep writing a show if the characters do not age. You do not have to deal with puberty. You do not have to recast voice actors. You do not have to move the characters to a new school. It is a practical decision, and it is. But it is also, whether the creators fully intended it or not, the single most important structural argument the show makes about American education. Because think about what it means that these children have been sitting in the same 4th grade classroom for 25 years. They have sat through every curriculum change. They have sat through every new educational program. They have sat through every piece of legislation passed by every administration. They have sat through every school reform, every assembly, every anti-bullying initiative, every sex ed rollout, every updated security measure, every costumed mascot, every guest speaker, every viral campaign, every celebrity intervention. They have sat through Columbine. They have sat through the rise of school shootings as a background feature of American life. They have sat through the installation of metal detectors and police dogs and armed hall monitors. They have sat through the war on drugs, the push for political correctness, the backlash against political correctness, the rise of social media, the collapse of shared media, the pandemic, and the return to classrooms afterward. They have sat through all of it in the same seats, with the same teacher, in the same building. And the show's argument, quietly made by letting them never graduate, is that all of those changes, across an entire generation of American political life, added up to nothing. The children are still in the same room. The lessons have not changed. The adults adults have not improved. The school has not become a better place. The only thing that has changed is the specific shape of the current crisis. This is what a 25-year refusal to age these children is actually saying. It is saying that whatever reforms you have heard about, whatever new ideas are supposedly being implemented, whatever this year's conversation in education circles happens to be, the boys in that classroom have seen it before. They have outlasted it. They will outlast the next one too. Because the thing being reformed is not capable of being reformed by the kind of reform being offered. The school is, in the show's world, a permanent institution that absorbs every reform, digests it, and comes out the other side more or less unchanged. And now take that insight and apply it to the audience of the show. The original viewers of South Park in 1997 were in high school and college. The teenagers who laughed at Cartman in season 1 are today in their 40s. They are not watching the show from the outside anymore. They have become the adults the show was making fun of. They are the teachers. They are the counselors. They are the principals. They are the parents of the children currently sitting in real American 4th grade classrooms. The Mr. Garrisons and Mr. Mackeys and Principal Victorias and PC principals that the show spent decades dismantling are now being played by the original viewers of the show. The people who watched the joke are now inside the joke. This is what the show has actually been documenting. Not predicting, documenting. The pattern was already there when the show started. The show named it, and the people who watched the show name it are now the ones reproducing it. Because naming a pattern does not by itself break the pattern. You have to change what you do. And what the show has been showing you across 28 years now is that Americans, including American audiences of South Park, are not good at changing what they do. They are very good at laughing at what they are doing. They are not as good at stopping. Think about Chef's line from Proper Condom Use, which we covered in section 4. Chef says directly that if you leave sex education up to the schools, you do not know who your children are learning it from. It could be someone who does not know. It could be someone with a bad opinion. It could be a complete pervert. This line aired in 2001, more than 2 decades ago. It is the show's clearest statement of its own thesis, spoken by one of the few adult characters the show fully trusts. And in the 2 decades since that line aired, American parents have not, on the whole, changed what they delegate to schools. The schools, on the whole, have not changed who they hire. The Mr. Garrisons and Miss Chalksendicks of the world are still there. The chef monologue did not fix anything. It just said the thing out loud very clearly one time, and the country absorbed it as comedy and kept going. This is what it means to be a generation raised inside South Park's version of a classroom. You learned very early how to see the failures of your school. You learned very early how to laugh at them. You learned very early the exact shape of the institution's dysfunction. And then you graduated into a country where nothing about that institution had been changed, and you took your place inside it, and now the 4th graders sitting in your classroom, real ones in real schools, are watching the same kinds of adults you once watched and are laughing at the same kinds of jokes you once laughed at, and nothing is different except the names. And this is where the personal history of the show's creators matters in a way that most analysis misses. Matt Stone grew up in Littleton, Colorado. Trey Parker grew up in Evergreen, Colorado. These are specific places. They are not abstractions. When Columbine happened in 1999, 2 years into the show's run, it happened in Stone's hometown, at a real school, to real children he could have gone to school with if his life had gone slightly differently. The school they were inventing for the show, South Park Elementary, was partly based on schools they had actually attended. The fictional classroom the children have been sitting in for 25 years was, from the start, shaped by the real classrooms 2 Colorado kids had sat in themselves. When the show finally staged a school shooting in 2018 in the episode Dead Kids, it was not satirizing a thing that had happened to other people. It was portraying a thing that had happened in real life, in the literal places the show was based on, to people the show's creators might have known. Parker once said in an interview about the Ike's Wee Wee episode that his own philosophy about school was that if he had a child, he would tell that child, do whatever you want, just wait until college, because you do not know what is up right now. The creator of the show has, on the record, stated that his belief about American education is that real learning begins after it is over. The school years are, in his view, a period of waiting, not a period of growth, a period of enduring what is being done to you until you are old enough to start again on your own terms. That is a remarkable thing for a man who has spent almost 30 years of his life writing a show set inside a school to believe. And it matters because it means that everything we have talked about in this video was not accidental. It was not just jokes that happened to add up to an argument. It was an argument being made by 2 people who did not trust the institution they were writing about across 30 years of television, with a cast of characters who were never allowed to leave the building. The argument was that these children, all children, any American child, are not being educated by their schools in any meaningful sense. They are being processed. They are being held in place. They are being taught how to sit through things. They are being taught, as the dead kid's classroom scene made so terribly clear, that when the situation is unbearable, you keep going with the lesson anyway. And when they are finally old enough to leave, they will discover that the world they have been prepared for is the world the school produced, because the school has been producing the world all along. Every Mr. Garrison raised another Cartman. Every Cartman grew up to become another Mr. Mackey. Every Mr. Mackey became another PC principal. Every PC principal became another Principal Victoria. The cycle is the argument. The institution is self-regenerating, and the children who sit in it are not being shaped into citizens. They are being shaped into replacement parts. This is the verdict. The show's entire case against American education, made across 9 sections of this video and 28 seasons of television, is this. The school is not broken in a way that can be fixed by reform. The school is working exactly as its structure allows it to work. The teachers do not teach. The counselors do not counsel. The curriculum does not educate. The principals do not lead. The classroom is not a classroom. The students are not being taught. And the children in the seats, who know this, who can feel it, who grow up inside it, are being trained to accept that this is what an institution feels like, so that when they enter other institutions as adults, they will not be surprised and they will not resist. This is why the show keeps them in 4th grade, because the show is not really about them. The show is about the room. The children are the witnesses. They have sat in the room longer than any of us have. They have seen everything we have seen, and they have not been allowed to leave. They are there so we can look at them and remember what it felt like. Remember what it felt like to be held in a place like that. Remember what we absorbed without agreeing to it when we were their age. Remember, and then, if we can, decide whether we want to keep doing it to the children who are, right now, sitting in real 4th grade classrooms in real American towns, absorbing what our version of the institution is teaching them. If you enjoyed this video essay, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.